Welcome to the Right Hand Roadmap, the podcast for seconds in command of founder-led companies. I'm your host, Megan Long, owner of Second First. In each episode, we show you the path to success on your journey as the #2 leader in entrepreneurial companies. I am so happy you are here. If this is your first time, welcome. I am Megan Long, the founder of Second First. These episodes are short, little commute-sized trainings for the second in command of founder-led companies. So if you are the right-hand leader or a member of the leadership team of a small to medium-sized business working directly with the founder or working directly with an entrepreneur, welcome. You have found your home. Today, we are diving in to a psychological concept that directly impacts your role, the Dunning-Kruger effect. We'll explore how it applies to seconds in command and what you can do to avoid its pitfalls. As a COO or a second in command, you sit between the CEO's vision and the company's execution. You are often the one making sense of chaos, translating ideas into action, and ensuring that things actually get done. But here's the challenge. Because you are in such a unique seat to see the full complexity of the business, you see all the departments, you see all the different elements that others do not, you might underestimate your own expertise and sometimes hesitate to assert yourself. Meanwhile, someone with far less understanding of the business might assume things are much simpler than they really are. Sound familiar? That is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect, identified by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, describes how people with a low competence tend to overestimate their abilities, while those with high competence tend to underestimate themselves. In other words, the less you know, the more confident you feel. And the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. This is so crucial for seconds in command to understand. I actually see it a lot in my one-on-one coaching. The COO or the second in command feels like they have a pretty good handle on their role. And then about a month into working one-on-one together, their confidence tanks. This is something that we measure throughout our engagement. I ask them to give me a self-assessment every week or every 2 weeks on how much they feel like they have a mastery of their role. And on a scale of 1 to 5, it'll start at like a 4.5, a 4. And then all of a sudden I notice it goes to a 3 or a 2 or even lower. And nothing significant happened other than the fact that they just started to realize they don't know a lot and that there's a whole world out there that they weren't familiar with. They feel like they don't have a mastery of their role because they're realizing there's just a lot of stuff they didn't know. That's when your wisdom levels are actually increasing. So it feels like the opposite's happening, but your wisdom is going up. You are realizing how much there is to learn. There's a graph that accompanies the Dunning-Kruger effect, actually calls it the peak of Mount Stupid, when you are super, super confident, but know very little because you don't know what you don't know. So how else does this play out in real life? This concept that those with high competence tend to underestimate themselves and those with low competence really overestimate their abilities. There are 3 ways that the Dunning-Kruger effect can really impact you. The first is you second guess yourself when you shouldn't. I mentioned at the beginning, you see all of the complexities and unknowns in the business. And because of this, you might hesitate to make decisions, even when you are utterly the most qualified person to do so. The second area that the Dunning-Kruger effect plays out in real life is we assume that CEOs have all the answers. If your CEO or if your entrepreneur is speaking with confidence, you might assume that they see the whole picture and that they know best. But in reality, they might not understand the operational intricacies that you do. They might not know the full effect that their decisions have without your perspective. And third, you hold back on, I'll call it leading boldly. So instead of stepping up and really owning your role, you may defer too much to others, even when your perspective is most critical to their success. As a second in command, assuming you don't sit in other seats on your org chart, you really are orchestrating all the other department leads. So all the other members of leadership actually are representing their business function, their department. You might not have that department or business function that you directly work in. But because you see all of this, you see all of these different pieces of the business, and they might operate just in their silo, you truly do have the best perspective. So how do we avoid falling into this Dunning-Kruger trap? First is obviously trust your expertise. You are in your role for a reason. Just because you know that there's a lot you may not know, doesn't mean you don't have the answers. It just means you have self-awareness. Because you do have that self-awareness that there might be some things you're not aware of, or there are things that you don't know. Use that curiosity to fuel your growth. Ask the questions, go do more research, read more books, get a coach. Put that energy and that curiosity into your own professional development. Second, assert yourself with confidence. Your CEO needs a strong second in command who can challenge their assumptions and offer well-informed solutions. So it goes back to the assuming your CEO always has the right answer or always knows best. More times than not, they will appreciate you pushing back or saying, I hear what you're saying. Here's another perspective. Or have you thought of this? I have found that for the most part, entrepreneurs really dislike being surrounded by yes men. Just be prepared if they decide to go in their direction, regardless of the information you have provided. And finally, I touched on this a little bit with the first one, but just embracing continuous learning. The more you learn, the more gaps you will see, and the more you will realize, I did that thing wrong 3 years ago, or knowing what I know now, I would have handled that differently. That's not a sign of incompetence. That is a sign of growth. So keep learning, but just don't let it paralyze you, or don't let it think because you would handle things differently now than you did in the past, that means you are an ineffective leader. To find show notes and links for anything mentioned in this episode, visit secondfirst.com/40. Be sure to subscribe to catch future episodes and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Remember, you don't have to navigate being a second in command alone when you have the right hand roadmap.